So good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Transform Your Business with Agile Infrastructure. My name is Sharad Agarwal, and I am the founder of onlywebinars.com. I will be moderating this webinar, which is co-sponsored by Tech Access and Hitachi Vantara. You will all agree that data is growing exponentially, thanks to the growing number of data-generating devices, such as smartphones, wearable electronics, host of IoT gadgets with sensors, imminent adoption of 5G, and other technological advancements such as AI, AR, VR, blockchain, and indeed webinars such as these. The challenge then is, how do you store and manage this data intelligently? This is precisely what we will be discussing in today's webinar. Now, I would like to introduce to you our two speakers. Jason Beckett is a global leader. Hi, Jason.
Hi, everybody.
Jason Beckett is a global leader and in charge of commercial technical sales at Hitachi Vantara. He has over 30 years of leadership experience working for demanding major US multinational IT vendors. Jason will introduce us to Hitachi's data management solutions and tell us why the Hitachi Vantara technology is the Rolls-Royce of the storage industry. We also have with us Chris G, who is the UCP sales specialist for EMEA region at Hitachi Vantara, based out of UK. Good morning, Chris G.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, he will be talking to us about Hitachi's unified compute platform. But first, let's start with Jason. Jason, are you ready? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Shad. So let me just start to share.
Yeah, all good.
Let me just go into. Just while
I may remind the audience that if you have any questions, which I'm sure you will have, feel free to post them in the chat window or in the Q&A tab, and we'll be happy to take your questions after Chris G is done with his presentation. Yeah.
Okay.
Jason, you're all set.
Okay. Thank you. Can you just confirm you can see the agenda slide?
Yes. Good.
Okay. Great. Yeah. Apologies for the slide not working at the very beginning. So look, a warm welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for your time today to spend with Hitachi Vantara. You know, myself and Chris and the team on the call are looking forward to sharing our thoughts. And very much so, you know, the key thing is in and around data and data management. So, you know, we'll talk about how we see, you know, the data management, and also, you know, we can express what we're seeing from our partners and our customers as well, you know, from a point of view of the Middle East and also in terms of EMEA and also worldwide as well. And the key thing is making sure with your data that you're in a situation whereby you have control of it and you have your management of your data and you do not allow it to, you know, get out of control. So for today, I'm going to talk about the Hitachi value, talk about our portfolio and our offerings, talk a little bit about storage and what we're doing around the management of it. And then I'm going to wrap up as well, talking about our commercial offerings, because you know, a lot of customers now are looking at how best to finance, how best to pay, you know, what's the right structure. So, you know, that's very much a key part of the conversations with customers and partners as well. So we'll touch on the commercial offerings just to give you a flavor in terms of Hitachi's approach. And then Chris is going to go a little bit deeper in terms of our unified compute platform and talk more specifically about, you know, how the UCP helps to support in terms of, you know, cloud workloads, in terms of the management, in terms of the protection of data, and also as well in terms of, you know, future-proofing our particular technology sets. So in terms of Hitachi, I just want to take some time just to talk a little about Hitachi itself. And for those that don't fully know and understand Hitachi, so we are uniquely positioned for, digital transformation. And what we want to do and what we're focused on is creating real value for our customers. So, again, when you think about data, it's not a case of just storing the data. We want to actually move the data in terms of, being in a situation whereby we can activate the data, we can monetize the data. And also when you look at it, you can use your data in specific ways, that helps you from a compliance or a regulation point of view. But when we look at Hitachi today, Hitachi is an organization which is over 100 years. And fundamentally, Hitachi's DNA has always been an organization which is an engineering organization. So, it's very much focused on innovation. It's very much focused on engineering capabilities, and anything that you want from a rice cooker all the way through to a nuclear power plant. Hitachi can create, Hitachi can make, Hitachi can manufacture, that particular area. So we've got what we call our OT, which is 110 years old, and that's, in terms of industrial, that's focused on, consumer, that's focused on, trains and various things, as CCTV. And then also we've got our IT, right, which is, focus on, communications, AI, IT systems, big data, cloud, et cetera. And if we bring them two together, that's when we get our IoT. And if we give you an example of that working in real life, we have customers, for example, who have bought Hitachi trains, and those particular trains, provide services to rail operators, and they go from city to city. Now, when these trains are moving, obviously there's a lot of data that's being created with things like, how fast the wheels are turning, how quickly the doors are opening and closing when they come into stations, who's sitting where on the train, who's going to buy what, how long are people staying on the train, et cetera. And when the train finishes its journey, that data is then uploaded. And it's then analyzed, right? It's then analyzed using big data, and then reports are then given to train operators, reports are then given through to the rail operators in terms of how the actual rail itself and the networks work and operated. And from there, they can look in terms of, customer trends. They can look in terms of whether they need to take a proactive maintenance on the particular trains, or what they need to do in terms of the track itself. So that gives an example of IoT and working and operating together. But the key thing in terms of Hitachi overall, it's a huge organization. It's one that's very much focused on, engineering quality and capability, and very much in terms of how we go about and manage and maximize our DNA. Yeah. So IoT and research and development is certainly definitely part of the DNA of Hitachi. So when we, look in terms of the IT, in terms of the modern IT ecosystem, this is what we typically see out there. This is what we typically see with our customers, and this is what we see with the various environments that we're helping and supporting. So we're finding that customers have got data centers, they've got on-premise workloads, where they have then digital infrastructure that work and then manage. And then they've then got the data, and the data is stored in different areas, whether it be block, whether it be file, whether it be object store, whether customers need to do, archive, deep archive, etc. And if I give you an example of that, if you look in things like Twitter, and if you look at the US government, so every time a tweet comes out from the White House, that has to be stored and kept and protected forever. And that actually runs on Hitachi Vantara, that runs on our architecture, that runs on our technology. And we've got, working with the likes of the US government, we've got contracts in place that don't run for 20 years or 50 years. These contracts run for 500 years, right? So that's where you've got your deep archive. That's where you've then got your focus in terms of your object store. But again, that comes down to the management of the data that happens. And then we've then got obviously our compute. And then within that, you've then got, your converged and hyperconverged, which, Chris will talk about. But, we partner very closely with Vmware. And, with that, we provide, things like hyperconverged, infrastructure, hyperconverged solutions that help customers in terms of their cloud and their cloud workloads. And then you've got your various applications, as you can see that lay across the top, Oracle, SAP, et cetera, which you can then use in terms of cloud. either hybrid or on-prem or fully public. So again, that's what we're seeing in terms of the typical ecosystem. And one of the things that we do is when we're talking with partners and also with customers, we talk about, what is it they're trying to do? What is it you're trying to do and go towards, right? And it might be that you are looking to modernize. It might be that you're looking to manage and control your data, or it might be that you're in a space whereby you want to free up some funding or you want to free up some cash that enables you to move more to a space of digital infrastructure whereby you can do, big data analytics, or you can look in terms of taking more proactive work as well. So we help customers move from what we call the typical mode 1 and help customers move to mode 2, which is, like I say, the next stage that they want to go to in terms of their journey itself. Also, as well, we're seeing a lot of focus in terms of data governance. And also the management of data governance across the system. So, with regulations, with compliance, whether it be GDPR or whether it be MiFID or whether it be whatever the local regulations are, how can I manage my data whereby if we're audited, I know that I can show that my data is in the right place, it's tagged accordingly, and I know that that data is there in terms of people's PII information and protected, accordingly as well. So this is what we see in terms of a typical IT modern infrastructure that happens and is running today, and where customers want help and support, whether it's to be, fully moved to the cloud, or whether it's to be more of a hybrid, or whether they want to stay on-prem, or whether they've moved workloads to the cloud, but they actually want to then move it back. So it's a balance between, all the various areas. And from Hitachi Vantara's point of view, we're very much cloud agnostic. We just want to help customers in terms of what is it the goal that they're trying to do and what is it they're trying to achieve from their business point of view. So that's what we see in terms of a modern ecosystem itself. So this slide, I call this slide and is the family photo. So this is basically our digital infrastructure portfolio. This is our suite of offerings, and we start in terms of the storage. Yeah. So again, when you think about storing your data, we've got basically a storage family, that provides a lot of strength in terms of agility, scale, and also performance. So we have what you call a common user experience in terms of SFOS, so which is our operating system for storage. And SFOS is across our storage family. It's across our storage platform. And the strong strength about that is, it comes back to the point about it being the same DNA. So with our manufacturing plants that we have in terms of Japan, it's the same engineers that are working on our smaller storage platforms, whether it be the likes of the G370s or the F370s, all the way up to our enterprise, top of the range, if you want to call it that, or VSP, 5000s and 5500s that sit there. So we've got the same engineering DNA, and also from the perspective of, the same quality that goes into all the products. So again, it's very similar in terms of the architecture. So customers get very much the same user experience. They get the same reliability. They get the same quality that comes in. So, that's why we're focused on, ensuring that customers see that quality, and also with regards to the reliability. So within that, we've got, modern data protection. So again, we've got offerings in and around how we protect data for long term as well. And as well, we've got, things like Object Store, which is what we call our Hitachi compute platform. And within Object Store, what we find is a lot of customers turn to that particular solution because within data, they can do metadata tagging. So when you're considering in terms of, how to manage your data and how best to show that from a regulation or from a governance or from a regulation point of view, certainly our Object Store platform is a key area. And we've got customers today who are in the process of putting together, GDPR solutions using Object Store and some other software as well that enables them to have those regulations, from a point of view of protection, so they don't get fined. And then to make a lot of this, happen and work, we've got then our management and orchestration. So basically, we have what we call Ops Center, and then within our Ops Center, we have different levels of support and different levels of software to control our storage. So we've got things in there with regards to administration software, analyzer, automation, protect. So in summary, from a point of view of managing and storage admin, this Ops Center gives customers the ability to be able to manage all of their software in a seamless way. So for example, if a user needs more storage and they've got particular workloads that are happening, all they need to do is send a simple email, and that email, to say, I need X amount of terabytes more, it will then be provisioned and given to them. And all it takes is a simple email to actually do that. And we've got in there as well, analyzer that looks at what's being used, and again it produces reports about your data management, your data growth, etc. So it gives a full suite in terms of being able to focus on what's happening, to be able to automate, but then also it makes productivity for partners a lot more productive, because they can then use these particular software offerings to support that. And then as well, we've got a simplified consumption, and Chris will go into a lot more detail here. So we've got our converged, we've got our hyper-converged offerings, rack scale, we've got partnerships with Cisco, and we've got as a service and enterprise cloud offerings as well. And the key thing here is that, again, we focus on what is it the customer's trying to do, and also what they're trying to achieve within specific timeframes and also budgets. But the key thing here is we work with the likes of VMware, and also other partners, to work with customers in terms of what is it they're trying to do within their particular cloud journey, what is it they're trying to do from a price point, and what's going to be the objective. And like I say, Chris will touch on some of these areas. And then finally, we talk about hybrid cloud, private cloud, mission critical apps, big data analytics. So, within Hitachi Vantara, we've got services whereby if customers have got, for example, applications which were not born in the cloud, then we can work with customers in terms of modernizing those applications, so which can then be enabled to move into the cloud. Time and time again, particularly, what I'm seeing is that customers want to move 100% into the cloud, and that's their goal, which is great. But then they realize some of their applications do need to be modernized, or actually in some cases also need to be changed as well. So it needs to be considered in terms of, what's the right direction and how quickly can people move in terms of their cloud migration. So that's, like I say, this is the family photo. This is the overview in terms of our digital infrastructure from Hitachi Vantara, that we have and then we offer. Just moving to this slide, this is very much a slide that I like to show as well. Again, it comes down to the management of the data. So there's a couple of things here in terms of, we will look at data in terms of compression, deduplication, and typically, we are seeing that, customers can look at their data and get 4-to-1 from the perspective of being able to do the consolidation of their data. So, we've got in there, basically 4-to-1 on seeing and up to 7-to-1 data guarantee in terms of what we will drive, through our particular microcode and also our solutions as well. So we've got guarantees to do that, and that helps in terms of floor space. It also helps in terms of driving costs down as well. And then as well, we've got 100% data availability guarantee. So, if there's an issue with regards to data, so we will, basically, replace the equipment, credit the data, if it becomes unavailable. So the way that the Vantara architecture works is that we don't have any single points of failure. And also we've got multiple layers of redundancy, but also the way the operating system works is it spreads the workload across the complete architecture. So that's why we find that components don't work out or don't wear out as quickly, because of the magic that's within the microcode and driving it. So, a couple of key takeaways here is that, in terms of the management of the data, 4-to-1 and 7-to-1 total efficiency, and then 100% data, availability guarantee that we've got. So some headlines there. And don't believe everything that I'm saying. Here's a proven track record in terms of some customers, and some brands that you will recognize there. So, where we've done this work, we've taken customers from basically their mode 1 and taken them to mode 2, and that's put them in a situation whereby, they've had cost reductions. For one customer, for example, we're in the process of moving over 1 trillion records. So basically, we're taking 1 trillion records that they've got today, which is costing them from a data management, data storage, and we're actually activating that data. So, we're taking that data, we're activating it, we're enriching it, and we're monetizing it. And also, we're using that data to protect, from a point of view of regulation and compliance. And an example might be, if you've got, customers, if you've got customer data within your environment, and if you look at it in terms of things like PII information, then, if you've got, I don't know, say for example, you've got people's passports and those passports are not tagged, well, from a compliance and a regulation point of view, you could be at risk from a fine. So, we will work with customers in terms of identifying if there's data there that should be tagged. And if it's not tagged, we will go through a process to say, we're highlighting some risk here. You as a customer need to do something to address this to prevent, future regulation or future compliance issues with regards to, your particular compliance and regulation process itself. So there's 1 or 2, customers whereby, we've driven down TCO, we've done cost savings, we've helped in terms of, moving their data from a dormant perspective to an enrichment and activate and then monetize state as well, through some of our conversations and some of our work that we've done previously. And again, that's all been done, when you look at it in terms of the, the digital infrastructure that we offer through to customers with our services as well. But also, market recognition. So everybody, always asks and loves to see, Gartner and IDC and Forrester slides as well. So we work with obviously these organizations, but, we are leaders in terms of our prime storage, particularly when you look at our VSP series as well. We are a major player in terms of, working with cloud and professional services. And also as well, things like, object store, which I touched on before in terms of regulation and management. So you can see there that we've got, conversations with the likes of Gartner and IDC. And also, if anybody after this session would like to talk with, particularly with the likes of Gartner, then, we can set up a session with them and also with Vantara as well to have some further discussions in terms of their thoughts. So very much, we've got a partnership with these organizations. And then speaking with regards to partnerships and looking ahead in terms of, as we grow, it's like I say, it's key in terms of, innovation, that we've talked upon. So, and also alliances. So, we are very much focused on, AI and machine learning. So, there's a lot of work going on in terms of that particular space. And again, when you think about that, we've got some solutions out there. And again, I'll come back and use a train analogy. If anybody ever travels to the UK and goes through Waterloo train station, well, that's actually monitored in terms of Hitachi cameras. And what that's looking for is, again, the number of people that are on the platforms, who's moving, if anybody is acting suspicious, if anybody starts to run, et cetera, they will be picked up. That will be analyzed, yeah. So and then flagged to the local alert and local security that's in there. So again, an organization, we're very much focused on, AI, machine learning, and also from a point of view of, if customers are supplied with data, right? It's great that you've got the data, but it's even better if actually the data is telling you something and recommendations are made. So that's then where we're going in terms of not only providing data and then the insights, but then actually the data making recommendations to our customers in terms of how they're working and operating. So that's taking it to, very much the next level. So we've got, over 80, accreditations with strategic alliances and our partner ecosystem. So, you can see there we work with AWS, Azure, Cisco, Google, Oracle, all of the big names that you would, very much expect. So we've got 80 accreditations. We've got over 50 plus, certified resources in these areas. And also, we've got things like advanced consulting. We work with the likes of Google and focus in terms of our engineering labs working through with these various organizations as well. So, and then when you finish off in terms of the integration, so we've very much got, when you talk about integration, we invested in terms of Pentaho, which is our big data and analytics. And again, that's a fantastic tool set in terms of customers being able to not only manage their data, but to get the insights that they need. Rain Cloud is our organization that looks at it in terms of customers migrating to and from the cloud, their application modernization. Hitachi Consulting is very much an organization whereby we can provide the right consulting to help in terms of customers' experience, particularly with things like financial services, particularly in around engineering, particularly with regards to what we're seeing on an EMEA basis and also global as well. Oxia is our SAP organization, so in terms of our SAP practice and management accordingly as well. So we've got lots of integration there, in terms of across the board, and Hitachi Vantara will continue to invest, in terms of making us stronger to help to provide better services through to our customers. So this is the last slide I've got from a point of view of our portfolio, and I just want to finish with this particular one. So, we've got industry first and best, most trusted data availability guarantee. So, time and time again, I hear from customers in terms of the quality and the reliability, and I've touched on how Hitachi Vantara actually goes through that and the approach that's taken. And, recently I talked with a customer, and the customer said to me, Jason, in a way, it's a shame your technology doesn't break more, because we'd actually talk more, and we'd have a situation whereby we'd have more need to talk, as it were. And I thought it was an interesting point that came through. So, but again, 100% data availability guarantee, enterprise class in terms of our focus with regards to our metro cluster and our storage virtualization, and also business continuity. So again, when we see customers that are running their mission critical applications, no matter which industry, and they need that reliability at the key points of their particular, their business week, their business quarter, again, it's the enterprise class that they will come back to in terms of wanting to go with Hitachi as well. So, restart operation faster. So application aware and copy management prevents data loss. Yeah. And also as well, we've got things like our remote support, that brings, predictive and preventative, downtime as well, and non-disruption in terms of data migration. So, again, that comes down to the management, and also from a point of view of how customers need to do migration, and we provide services and we provide the tools that basically enable that in terms of a migration perspective. So that's an overview in terms of our portfolio. And if I just move to the next couple of slides, to finish off, I just want to talk a little bit about commercial offerings. So, we find now that, customers spend a lot of time considering, what's the right approach here in terms of, how to purchase, what's the right approach in terms of, paying for the flexible storage. So we very much, through our Everflex offering, which is our commercial team, we very much look at this in terms of, making sure that we've got a simple, format in terms of how customers can purchase. And we very much like it, make it a lease or a cloud-like consumption model. So very much as well in terms of, the length of service. So, very much we keep this in terms of, outcomes in terms of what you consume. And also as well, we look at it from the perspective of, what's the right area for customers in terms of their payments. So it might be that customers want to pay less at the start of the contract, or they want to pay, less at the end of the contract. So again, we'll tailor this from the perspective of looking at it in terms of, a price per terabyte or a price per usage, et cetera, et cetera. So we have our Everflex team in terms of, working with our customers in terms of what's the right way to consume, what's the right way that, from a funding point of view. So, customers may have a situation whereby they're going to do more acquisitions, so they know they're going to take on more workload, or they may have a situation whereby they're not going to need as much capacity going forward because of the different workloads. So again, we can look at this in terms of having, a scalable, pay as you use area, from a payment, and also as well, they're service level backed. So we will provide the service levels to ensure that we've got the right uptime. We'll provide the service levels in terms of, what's needed for our customers. And again, that'll then be the backing in terms of the commercial wraparound, that customers need from there. So typically what we find is it improves, the agility, it improves commercial agility. Customers as well can wrap in things like, upgrades. So if customers want to upgrade for the future or upgrade to future technology, we can wrap that in terms of the commercial offerings. It helps in terms of avoiding delays or disruption in terms of, key migrations, or from the point of view of, key workloads that need to come on board as well. And also it can reduce things like, over provisioning. So, you're operating in the true cost that's needed to support your business, and, removing, things like wastage as well. So, where you've got IT that might be on the floor and not being used to its full extent is costing you money. So, by doing this, it can help to reduce, any particular cost that's overdone as well. So, and also it improves, lifecycle management, and also as well to simplify procurement. Because once this is in place, it's something that can be renewed. And like I say, it's something that's going to have a perpetual, contract in terms of the hardware, in terms of the software, and how that you pay. So again, trying to make it as simple as possible with regards to the cost side. So again, we find that there's a lot of conversation about this, which is great, because everybody needs to ensure that they've got their eyes wide open, particularly when you think about cloud and cloud workloads. But what's vital as well is that, it's there to support and help to manage, our customers' business in terms of how they go through the particular consumption models from that side. So that's my final slide in terms of the overview of Vantara. So I know that we're going to touch on one or two things a bit later, but I'd just like to say thank you very much for your time today. I'm here for the rest of the session for the Q&A. But with that, I'm going to hand back to Shard, for the next phase.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. We are now educated on Hitachi Vantara's offerings, and there are already a few questions that have been posted by the audience, but we'll take them after Chris G's presentation, which is going to be about the unified compute platform. So Chris, if you are ready, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. A very good morning to everybody, and a warm welcome from Hitachi. So today I'm going to be talking about Unified Compute Platform, indeed what it is. It is a portfolio of products which Hitachi offer around cloud, around application, around business application. We're going to focus today more on the virtualization aspects of the Unified Compute Platform. We tend to find that talking feeds and speeds with customers lately is not the best way to hit home to a lot of customers. So we kind of change our approach. We have offerings that are more focused around, like we say, virtualization, but application, which is really where most of our customers really want to have those conversations. So hopefully this will inspire us to have some good, decent conversations. So let's have a look at the portfolio now. At the bottom there, you'll see the infrastructure portfolio, and that consists of storage, which Jason has very given us a good insight into the different types of storage arrays that we can offer, from hybrid arrays to all flash, and indeed looking at our HCP object storage units. Now, encased inside of that is Converged. Now, Converged is basically a way that we can start to fuse server, storage, and networking together to be almost like that ultimate platform that we can call upon as a resource block, whether we want to serve out bare metal servers or whether we want to virtualize those servers or indeed application servers. So we can then incorporate levels of automation using our operations management over and above that. And of course, after that, we can then start to look at different ways that we can start to optimize the data within inside those units, or indeed to cleanse or transform that data. And then finally, the layer that sits all above there is the analytics and machine learning layer. This is a way that we can start to really mine that data to understand, how we can utilize that data, how we can make that presentation of that data more efficient. And Jason refers to a term of monetizing the data. This is exactly what we need to do to monetize our data. So you can see there that Converged sits right at the bottom layer. It's a hardware infrastructure layer. However, it does touch on cloud computing, whether that be cloud on-premise or off-premise. This is the portfolio to take you there. Okay. Now, this is quite an important slide, because what this really kind of details to us is that we have various different types of platforms that are available. There are other vendors out there on the market that will say, hey, you can do it all with one physical platform. You can just drop everything into one platform and you can do everything. Well, that's not quite the case. If I've got some heavy iron applications that I need to support, then I can't choose Hyperconverged, because Hyperconverged typically is a virtualization platform that doesn't support bare metal. Yeah, in the same way that if I want to take things to cloud, if I want to build a cloud portal to start moving workloads from an on-premise situation to an off-premise situation, can I do that with Hyperconverged? Well, kind of, but you need some other products on top of that to give you that level of automation and that level of virtualization, not only just from the server perspective, but also from networking as well. And Converged, a lot of people look at Converged and say, well, Converged is expensive, yeah? So I want something a little bit more cheap. I don't really want kind of Converged anymore, and it's too expensive for me. So really what we're finding is that there's going to be a blend of all of these types of architectures. And this is one of the key advantages with partnering with Hitachi, because we can blend all of these technologies together under one single management pane. And also you can start to then repurpose some of these nodes, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But it's key to know that all of these problems, all of these situations are key to every industry vertical, whether you're in finance, whether you're in retail, whether you're in manufacturing, it doesn't matter. It's the same types of approaches that people are making across the board. So let's have a closer look at the family. This is the UCP family, and as I said before, we're looking more at the virtualization aspects rather than the business application aspects. If anybody is interested in business application aspects of the UCP family, then please reach out to one of the team, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more intimately about our offerings in those areas. But the UCP family, from our perspective, when looking at virtualization, really falls into three hardware pillars. Now let's talk about those pillars and give you a brief overview of what those are. Converse Infrastructure, or CI as we like to call it. CI is essentially server, it's networking, and it is storage, all pre-qualified, pre-tested, bundled together. And that serves up a very agile platform. It scales independently, so you can start to grow in many different areas. And we have the flexibility of mixing and matching different compute workloads together. And we'll touch on this a little bit later on. But Converged sometimes to a lot of customers is considered expensive. Why? Well, it's largely because you need a storage system, you need a SAN architecture, as well as the networking infrastructure and server to go with that. Coupled with that, you need expertise in virtualization if you want to try and automate any of these platforms. So you can see this starts to become quite a beast in its own existence. So probably around 10 or so years ago, there was a notion really to try and simplify this architecture, and hence the birth of Hyperconverged. Now, Hyperconverged, as you probably already know, is just a simple way to start to offer out a converged infrastructure just with server nodes only. So this is now looking at your server node, with some onboard storage and some clever algorithm that basically will start to distribute the storage amongst all of those nodes in a very resilient manner. Now, hyperconverged is quite a simple way to start off your infrastructure. It's a great way because it's low costs to begin with, and you can start to scale that just by adding on additional nodes. But we'll look at some of the disadvantages with hyperconverged a little bit later on in our slide deck. Finally, rack scale. Now, rack scale is actually built upon hyperconverged infrastructure, but this time we've bundled our hyperconverged with VMware's VCF, VMware Cloud Foundation. Now, this layer, not exclusively, will give you a better foundation to a more cloud-like experience. It includes a lot of different products. We'll touch on this a little later on, but it includes a lot more different products in terms of looking at virtualization of your networking, looking at the management of your entire data center from a virtualization perspective, but also gives you that stepping stone towards some of the nicer products that VMware offer, such as the vRealize Cloud Suite. And that will give you the ability then to start to think about how you're going to move that workload into the cloud and indeed back again if needs be. So, you know, rack scale is definitely a product set that is starting to gain a little bit more traction inside the marketplace, because people are thinking, you know, later on, probably not now, I want to get that workload moving around with inside more low cost, more agile kind of architectures, and rack scale is definitely the way to proceed with that. But like I said before, not every one of these pillars can do everything all in one go. So Hitachi have come up with a way that we can start to blend these architectures together. We can start to think about how we run a hyper-converged inside a converged architecture, or rack scale inside converged. So you can have the best of both worlds. Yeah, you can have the low-cost area of hyper-converged and rack scale merged with a converged infrastructure. So how do we do it? Well, it's quite key. There are a few points. The first one is that we use the same server nodes across all platforms. So that means that repurposing some of those nodes is going to be key. But the one thing that holds them all together is our management platform. The management platform is called UCP Advisor, Unified Compute Platform Advisor. It's the same management stack for each and every one of those platforms. So whether you're operating converged, whether you're operating hyper-converged or rack scale, you have just one single management interface that is presented through vCenter in VMware. Let's now take a look at some of the workloads which are carried with these particular types of platforms, and you'll understand now the reason why we still present a converged infrastructure, a hyper-converged infrastructure, and a rack scale or at least a virtualized cloud-based infrastructure. So the first one, converged infrastructure, as we've said before, we can scale up, we can scale out. What do I mean by that? Well, I can start to scale my compute nodes independently of my storage and vice versa. And this is great when starting to look at bare metal workloads, where your storage is starting to exceed the realms of your standard implementation. Typical examples of this are SAP HANA, which is presented through SUSE operating system. Also, you know, we can run VMware on there if we wish, but that's not imperative. We don't have to. We can run Oracle workloads. We can also run our AI and ML management interfaces through that. So we can start to mine data through there. In fact, you know, really looking at the workload consumption of a converged infrastructure, it's pretty good for everything. But the one downside that it has is you need a lot of expertise in those areas to bring those on board. So this is where most people look at converged and say, yes, ideally that's what we want, but can we A, afford a converged infrastructure, but B, afford the people to run the converged infrastructure? So this is where now a lot of people start to look at hyper-converged. So for virtualization workloads, hyper-converged is great, especially with us. We partner with VMware around our hyper-converged infrastructure, and that's because they own the largest share of the market. Now, hyper-converged is a great starting block. As I've said before, these are resource blocks that you add as you want to grow. one of the nice things that you can run on hyperconverged infrastructure is VDI workloads. Yeah, you can have a separate cluster, and you can have some GPU based nodes that can then start to run a real good VDI infrastructure. Or indeed, it's great for remote offices where you need to start to replicate data back into a core infrastructure. It is probably a big waste of money putting a converged infrastructure inside a remote branch where you've only got 20 people working, as a good example. So hyperconverged really is coming to its own for robo markets and for VDI. If I look at rack scale, then rack scale is really a hyperconverged on steroids. This is a way that we can start to think about how we're running some more cloud-based architectures, whether that be on-premise or off-premise, such as Cloudera, Cassandra, MongoDB. One of the key advantages that Hitachi can bring here is that we have an all NVMe node. Now, what does that mean? It basically means that we can address the disks faster and more efficiently than other nodes running SSDs or indeed a hybrid node. So we can then start to think about the types of workloads that are going to be put on those nodes. So really, it's ideal for big data analytics, the kind of stuff where you're really going to have to ramp up your computing and also look at the data from the disks, bringing that data into memory, processing that, dropping it straight back down onto disk. Also, online transaction processing, database workloads are great with the NVMe nodes. And again, this gives us a better edge in terms of trying to get more and more workloads sat on a lower cost infrastructure. So that's really the three workload areas. But as you can see, the middle one there really focused just around virtualization. So it cannot support bare metal workloads. So just to emphasize that point. As I said before, and I'm going to re-emphasize again, this is all hung together by Ucp Advisor. It will work across all of these platforms. Yeah. If you're blending these platforms, then one version of Advisor will address both platforms. So if you have hyperconverged and converged, again, it will be managed by Ucp Advisor, single instance. Okay, now let's have a look at hyperconverged. This is a very simplistic diagram of hyperconverged. You'll see here we have some nodes. We have 4 of them, server nodes, and we have some storage attached to them. We're running vSAN from VMware. And as we said before, vSAN is that clever algorithm that's going to spread that information across multiple different nodes to give us a resilient infrastructure. So really that means if I have a node that fails, then all of my data stays in place. Now, I'm in control of however many nodes I want to fail, but of course that has an impact on how many nodes are in the architecture to begin with. In this particular diagram, I've actually indicated some switches, switch 1 and 2, which are for the consumer network. Switch 3 and 4, which could be virtualized, so we could set those up virtually within inside switch 1 and 2, are really for vSAN traffic. And this is to allow the storage to communicate across each other on their own separate private network. This is important. You don't really want this to be running around in your consumer network. So all hung together by Ucp Advisors. So let's look at some of the key points here. The key points here, it's a very simplified infrastructure, server nodes with attached storage, and that's really it. Reduced cost. So you start at a very low cost base, and you can start to expand as and when necessary, which therefore reduces the complexity. We just add in an identical node every time we want to expand. We've already talked about the single management interface using Ucp Advisor, and we've talked about some of the scalability advantages, but there are also disadvantages with scalability. Let's look at those. So if I want to add more storage to a hyper-converged infrastructure, I add another node. And that node contains compute that I've paid for, but I don't necessarily need to use. Yeah. In the same way, if I want to add more compute workload in there, or more compute power, I add another node, which has some more storage that I didn't necessarily need. So you are paying for infrastructure that you don't necessarily need. Yes, it might be low cost, But when you start adding this up and you start to grow the infrastructure, that becomes more significant. So hyperconverged definitely plateaus. It has its limits. So those are some of the disadvantages behind it. So how do we overcome those? Well, we overcome those by incorporating disaggregated hyperconverged. We were one of the first vendors to work with VMware on disaggregated hyperconverged. Well, why did we do that? Well, it's quite simple. You know, we have storage as at the heart of our infrastructure offerings. You know, why on earth would you set up a separate silo of storage? And when we have a perfectly good storage system there that can serve out storage as and when necessary. So this is a way now to start to blend in storage from a storage system that already exists, and then to present it to those hyperconverged nodes. This is called disaggregated hyperconverged. And essentially it's de-risking the environment. Why is it doing that? Well, when you look at it, you can, if you already have your storage system there and you have some free storage on that system, you can essentially say, okay, I'm not going to buy another node this time because not only have I got the hardware costs, but I've got the VMware cost, the licensing costs. I can eliminate that, and I can then just literally present the storage through a couple of HBAs inside those servers. And that therefore means that I can start to grow the storage independently of the compute. Yeah, that is a key attribute to going forward with hyperconverged, and indeed blending architectures together. You know, we can use Ops Center to manage the storage, or indeed we can get Ucp Advisor to also manage the storage as well. So, you know, there are very different ways of looking at this, and you know, when looking at these architectures, you have a choice. Yeah, you absolutely have a choice. You're not forced to go down one route. This is powered by vSAN, as we've already said, and you know, we've talked about those hybrid flash and NVMe options and the advantages of those. Now let's look at rack scale. As I mentioned before, rack scale is actually built on a UCP hyperconverged. It's a hyperconverged with VMware Cloud Foundation stacked on top of it. Now, VMware Cloud Foundation gives you software-defined data center manager. It gives you your vSAN licensing and your vSphere licensing, so you don't have to worry about that. It also gives you NSX, and it gives you vRealize log insight. So let's have a look at and see how that stacks up. You're quite familiar with the bottom diagram now. In the bottom left side, that is your UCP hyperconverged infrastructure. But stacked now on top of that, we put our VMware Cloud Foundation, and we bundle this as part of our UCP RS offering, rack scale offering. Now, once you've got that, and most people will say, okay, am I ready for cloud? Well, kind of not quite. This gives us a nice universal interface that we can start to think about how I move data in and out of the cloud. It's that same interface that's used if I'm operating virtual machines inside my cloud infrastructure, whether it's offered from AWS or from Google or Azure. But then what else do I need? Well, this is what else you're going to need, yeah? So this is the offering itself, hyperconverged VMware Cloud Foundation equals a UCP RS. But in addition to that, you are going to need vRealize Suite. Now, vRealize Suite is really the icing on the cake. It allows all of those operations to move very swiftly. It gives you that level of automation. It gives you that level of network analysis. But it also gives you the ability to start building things like cloud portals. So if you want to build an on-premise cloud and you want to then start to charge people out for the use of virtual machines, then that's an ideal way to do it. You know, you build your cloud portal, you build your t-shirt offerings, and indeed what you can do is you can get people to log on to the cloud portal, order what they want, and it's automatically provisioned under the covers and presented to them within a matter of hours. So, you know, this is the, you know, the way forward, absolutely the way forward. In the same way that I can provision inside a cloud using AWS or using Google Cloud. So, you know, these are parallel ways that we can start to think about how we're moving data to and from a cloud-based environment, whether that be on-premise or off-premise. Now let's look at converged infrastructure. It's the one that most people are a little bit more hesitant about, largely because of the cost. But there are distinct advantages with a UCP converged infrastructure. Firstly, we can operate different node types inside the same infrastructure. So right now, we're displaying a DS120 1U, DS220 a 2U. Then we have next to it the 240, which is a 2U 4 CPU system. And then finally the 225, which is a GPU focused box. So what we can do is we can scale these independently. Yeah. So we can scale the compute, we can scale the storage as and when we like. Okay, we don't have to buy just a singular node and start to expand that way. In addition, it's highly redundant. Yeah, so you've got 2 LAN switches, 2 SAN switches, so you've got full redundancy inside that stack. Talked about those different nodes, but they're really focused around the different types of workloads you want to run. So the 220 has more I/O slots, so therefore we can crank open the throughputs. You know, looking at the 4 CPU version of the 2 node, you know, you've got that for high processing. You've got a VDI focused node there, especially if you want to run any form of 3D rendering. And finally, you know, just general workloads you can run on the standard 2-socket 1U box. The key here is that all of these components are pre-qualified. They're pre-tested in our distribution center, and they're sent out to you as a tested pre-built stack. That means our day 0 deployment is much greater than anybody on the market. You know, we're wheeling these things in. They've already been pre-tested, pre-working, pre-qualified, pre-cabled. So when you drop this into the infrastructure, then your time to production is much less, and we call that day 0 deployment. Now, we talked about UCP Advisor all the way through this presentation, and that actually lives on its own management infrastructure, typically 2 or 3 nodes, and that is your eyes and ears over the infrastructure as it stands. But there's one key advantage here that UCP Advisor will give you in a converged infrastructure. It will actually automate a lot of the processes in provisioning, and that's a key attribute. It sits and it understands what infrastructure it has available. It knows how many server nodes it has. It knows the amount of ports that are there. It understands the storage pools that exist and how much free storage is available. It's also a health and monitoring and management tool. But in the UCP converged infrastructure, it is also responsible for running a setup wizard, if you like, or an orchestration wizard. You key in your attributes. You basically say, well, I want an ESX server, and I want it to be connected through these ports, and I want it to have this chunk of storage presented to it. And once you've gone through that setup wizard, you hit the go button, and this will provision for you within a matter of hours, rather than a matter of weeks, or even in some instances months. So this is a very fast and easy way to start to provision any form of virtualization tool when you're looking at ESX. But not only that, it does it for bare metal as well. So if I want to go through the same process and say, I want to spin up a Windows server, then I can do that. It basically goes through the same process, but when it gets to imaging, instead of picking the ESXi image, it will pick the Windows image and it will place that onto the server. So you can be in control of your own images. So you can put a pre-built image to your specification in there, and you can start to build those servers. Now, you don't have to touch Advisor. You can, in theory, you can start to get other tools to interface into Advisor, so you can be hands-off with the entire infrastructure management pane. And that gives customers a key advantage, because they can then start to streamline operations from ticketing systems, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. UCP Advisor is also responsible for all of the firmware upgrades as well. So it's an automated firmware package, which is dropped into Advisor, and it will do a rolling upgrade throughout those nodes, making sure that you're secure, but also on the latest versions of the firmware across the infrastructure, not only for the servers, but also for the SAN switches, the LAN switches, and the storage. And one nice thing about UCP CI is that it's a single point of support. That's for the servers, the storage, the SAN switches, the LAN switches, in fact, everything inside that stack, including the VMware. So if you buy VMware licensing from Hitachi, then that indeed is then supported by Hitachi. So a single support point there. He talks about the agility of this, and the agility kind of speaks volumes. You know, the fact that I can start to spin up automatically a virtual machine hosts, or indeed bare metal servers with operating systems like SUSE or Windows or CentOS, and I can spin those up in you know, typically less than a couple of hours, gives me the ability to start to redeploy people and say, you know what, instead of having someone actually physically doing this process and going through this tedious process of spinning up these servers, I can now then redeploy these people into more important roles, much more efficient roles, to look at what is the next technology we're going to bring on board, how are we going to do that. It also brings in on board business agility. So instead of waiting 2 weeks for a server to be spun up, it's spun up within 2 hours. So that means marketing can get on with that next new campaign that they need to roll out for the next launch. You know, it's all things like this which we need to start to think about. How closely is IT mapping into the business? Now, UCP-CI expands a little further. This is now when we start to talk about how we look at fusing these technologies together. And I'm going to give you one example here. This is fusing a UCP hyperconverged inside a UCP Converse infrastructure. So these nodes, as we've already discussed, have their own independent storage which are attached to them, and they will run their own cluster inside that infrastructure and connect into the LAN switches that you see at the top of the screen. But one important point here is that we can run disaggregated hyperconverged. Okay, so we're scaling again independently, so the storage can start to scale independently from the existing storage system that already exists there at the moment. But there's one key attribute, yeah, there's one key thing, and I mentioned it earlier, and it's to do with the node types. Yeah, these UCP hyperconverged nodes are in fact our DS range of servers. Yeah, so in effect, what we can do is we can start to de-risk that investment. Yeah, if your hyperconverged infrastructure is not working out for whatever reason, whether it be performance related, whether it's costing too much money, it doesn't matter. You can then start to think about how you're going to move that workload into the converged infrastructure. And then from that point, you can then start to think about repurposing those nodes. So those UCP hyperconverged nodes, we strip off the vSAN license. The storage can stay on board, it doesn't matter. But then you can start to push those into the standard converged infrastructure node types. Yeah. So this is really a way to think about, you know, have I adopted hyperconverged? No. Do I want to? Yes, because of the cost implications. But am I cautious? Absolutely, because I don't know if it's going to perform. Well, this is an ideal way to do this. Yeah, bring it on board. If it doesn't work out, you can move that workload from one to the other. And that movement to the workload, by the way, is using a standard VMware technology, storage vMotion. The key here is that we're managing everything from UCP Advisor. We've got the same node types, so you can then start to blend all of those nodes together. So really, you know, we've harmonized this workload. We've actually basically said it doesn't matter what your workload is. We've got platforms that not only will service all of those workloads, but the platforms will also talk to one another and blend into one another as well. Okay, so now let's look at a final extension, and it's kind of a dotted line extension because this is not really in the realms of orchestration, but I just really wanted to mention it so you're aware of it. We also have another product in our portfolio. It's called the DS7000. Now, the DS7000 is really focused around application workloads, particularly SAP, SAP HANA, and also Oracle databases. The key point about the DS7000 is that it's a system that can scale up. So I start with a 2-socket, and then I add another 2-socket server to that to become a 4-socket server. I can add another 6-socket, I can add another 8-socket, etc. As the sockets start to grow, the memory also starts to grow as well. So this particular system parallels something like a Superdome from HP. Now, the key advantage here is that we're drawing from the same storage system. we're using the same management tool, UCP Advisor, to manage that particular product. So you can start to get all your health stats, etc., from the DS7000. We don't orchestrate this product, and there's a very good reason why we don't orchestrate this product. You wouldn't probably buy an 8-socket server to run VMware. That's typically not where VMware play too well, although it potentially could work. But yeah, for heavy iron workloads, definitely the DS7000. But the key point I wanted to make here is that it's all managed by the same singular infrastructure interface. Now let's have a look at UCP Advisor. UCP Advisor, as I've mentioned before, is the glue that holds all of these infrastructure pieces together. It's the centralized management function that allows you to upgrade your firmware via the automated lifecycle management functionality. It also allows you to provision bare metal servers or indeed a virtualized host. You can also then start to run multi vCenter support. So you've got one instance of UCP Advisor looking at many different versions of vCenter. Now that comes in particularly useful when we're starting to blend some of these infrastructures together, because although they're kind of separate clusters, I still want to manage them from one single interface. So that's where UCP Advisor is quite key here. One nice thing about UCP Advisor is it's using RESTful APIs. And this allows the integration of third-party tools to talk directly to and instruct UCP Advisor in certain functions. A good example is there's a bank in the Netherlands who aren't actually using Advisor management interface at all. They've integrated it with ServiceNow, and ServiceNow receives and generates tickets. And if the tickets reach a certain condition, then it will instruct UCP Advisor to start to spin up a brand new physical host to apply ESX, and then of course to move virtual machines on top of there. So this is an automated process where they're not even touching UCP Advisor. However, it's key to the infrastructure deployment. Now we have integrations. We're going to talk about integrations in the next slide a little bit further, but vRealize Orchestrator, vRealize Log Insight, and Ops Center Automator are all key integrations of UCP Advisor, allowing UCP Advisor really to keep a hook on the VMware suite that sits around ESX. And as we've said before, you know, UCP Advisor is common to Converged, Hyper-Converged, Rack Scale, and also our Cisco offering solutions. We've partnered with Cisco, so we can basically fuse their compute and our storage together, and UCP Advisor plays a role in that as well. Okay, so to move on and have a look at some of our native VMware management. A lot of people are quite keen on taking some of those extra layers over and above the virtualization and indeed VCF, and they're starting to look at other products from the vRealize suite. You'll notice there's a lot of vRealize suite applications, and we also have plugins, free of charge plugins and management packs that are available to service those. What these are actually doing is really presenting our hardware up through and into those tools. So that's going to give you much more efficient operation. It's going to be able to get VMware to really start to talk and integrate with the hardware in a much better way, instead of going through all of the layers of the virtualized infrastructure before getting to ESX and hitting the hardware. Okay, so that's the reason why we've built some of these. The latest one you'll see there in orange, which is VLCM, VMware Lifecycle Manager. That's really to try and level set the infrastructure from a virtualization point of view, making sure that you're on the right versions of ESX across all of the infrastructure pieces, amongst many other things. So if you're interested, then you can go check out the VMware Marketplace. We have our home there, and all of the plugins and the attachments, etc., are all seated there, so you can find out more information there. Okay, so let's just have a look and see how we fare in terms of the way that IDC view us. You know, one of the key things here, and one of the reasons why we partner with VMware, you know, we've got a 20-year relationship that's still ongoing with VMware, so we're a platinum partner with them. And we've basically partnered with them for our HCI or their converged infrastructure technology with vSAN. It's the most adopted solution globally. You'll see here that their market share is 43.5%, and they're growing year on year, and they continue to be top. Now that's a double-edged sword for us. That's in one respect it's a positive because there's many more customers using VMware. That's very popular, but the downside is, of course, there's there are a lot more players out there. So we have to be vigilant of that. We have to be more cost effective, and we have to come up with innovative ways to sell our solutions. And I'm hoping today that you've seen some of those in our infrastructure offerings. Let's also look at how we compare with some various different other vendors. Typically, when we start looking at other vendors, they do have a lower hardware cost than we do. Now, some vendors are looking to move towards a subscription-based approach, which kind of wipes this model out slightly, but we can still go through a subscription approach if we start looking at some of the commercial offerings that Jason touched on in the latter part of his presentation. But you'll see there the hardware support cost is also a little bit more expensive from a Hitachi point of view. But look at the overall solution price. Yeah, look at the overall solution cost. The competitor in this instance is actually more expensive because their licensing cost is much more expensive. When looking at some of these observations, we have a way that we can start to reduce the overall hardware that you're going to put on the floor. Yeah, this is largely using the NVMe offerings. Yeah, but there's other technologies involved with that. We can scale storage independently, unlike other vendors. Okay, again, you're reducing down the amount of nodes that you're putting in there. Not only are you reducing the amount of nodes, you're also reducing the cost of the VMware licensing. Yeah, that's our disaggregated hyperconverged that we mentioned earlier. Hitachi also offer a singular management interface. So as and when you start to look at other competition, they'll have a silo here for your hyperconverged. You'll also have another silo for converged, etc. And that's not the case with Hitachi. Again, you're fusing these architectures together, and you're making sure that that singular management pane can manage everything. Yeah. Also, be careful about the way that some other vendors license their products. A lot of them do license their operating system as VMware do, as we do, but then they start to license individually cores, and they license storage separately. So if you have some quirky nodes that need a lot of storage but very few compute, then you're going to pay a premium because you have to license the storage. With us and VMware, you don't need to. Yeah, it's a singular license per node. Yeah, and it's licensed per physical core. Per physical socket. So if you have a 2-socket server, I have 2 vSAN licenses and 2 ESX licenses, and that's where it ends. Yeah, there is no further additional cost, irrespective of how much storage I've got on there, or indeed how many cores I have inside each CPU. So that's an insight into the competition. Hopefully you've got some good questions for us, and that concludes my part of the presentation. So back to Sharad, I think.
Yes, thanks, Chris. We now understand UCP better, and I'll give you a little time to rest before we come up with the questions that are directed at you. I think this is a good time to introduce Rehan Shahid and Santosh Shukla, who are also joining us. So Rehan is the Partner Territory Manager based right here in Dubai. And Santosh Shukla is the pre-sales consultant who's also going to help us in answering some of the questions from the audience. Rehan, if I may request you to post your contact information in the chat, so some of the people from the audience can reach out to you after this webinar. My first question, though, thanks, Rehan. My first question, though, is to Jason, and it's a little general. And post-COVID, digital transformation has accelerated, and everything is digital now. So, have you at Hitachi Vantara noticed a spurt in data storage requirements and data management requirements? And if so, if you can outline some of the industries specifically where you see that growth. So Jason, this one is for you.
It's a great question. And it's a fascinating one, isn't it, in terms of COVID? who would have thought in terms of the impact that COVID's made, around the world and to everybody. What we saw straight away was obviously the need for people to be working from home, especially in and around VDI solutions, which links into, part of our UCP offerings that Chris has touched on. So, there was many, customers that wanted to ensure that they had the facilities where staff could work from home, but then also carry on working. So, for example, within financial services, within banking, the banks needed to be able to still carry on offering their services and reach out and enable their staff to work from home to be able to talk to their customers as well. So there was huge demand, in and around the remote working, and also from a point of view of, again, provisioning the specific workloads to meet and manage that in terms of the different bandwidths, in terms of the different services they needed, and then also the different provisioning that they needed, during the day as well, from a point of view of workloads. So we certainly saw that as one of the main issues in terms of COVID. And then also, obviously, online retail, and the need to move in terms of online with regards to different customers. So there was a lot more activity in terms of web-based services. There was a lot more activity in terms of how customers could improve their internet, and especially when you look at it from a point of view of small, medium businesses who maybe didn't offer, on their websites, things like checking out services or be able to buy online. So we saw a lot of transformation in terms of web activity. We saw a lot in terms of customers wanting to use a lot more features, and then obviously, towards the back end of that, it's how it's then processed and the processing and the storage needs that's used in terms of covering that. So in terms of COVID, certainly the impact, with regards to companies wanting to function in terms of working from home, and then also from the perspective of, like I say, web and web services. Now, on the other side of it, we then had customers who, COVID, hit negativity in a negative way. So, for example, I touched on rail. So, no one's been using the trains, right? So, how do you then keep and manage that cost base, which you're going to need in the future, running today when no one's then paying and using your services when you haven't got your revenues coming in. So that was a different conversation about refinancing. That was a different conversation about maybe switching some services off, right? That was, the point about, you can flex up and you can flex down. So we also had those conversations with customers. And this is where your commercial models came in, that we were able to look at them, renegotiate them. So more of the costs were towards the back end, which then freed up, the cash and various things. So customers certainly went into what I would describe as an area whereby they needed to react to COVID. And then very much in terms of the process with regards to recovery, which quite a lot of organizations are now into. And then, it's kind of, well, what do we predict for the next 24 months? And if we're really honest, I'm not too sure anybody can accurately predict what's going to happen over the next 24 months, because things are certainly, still in a state of flux with regards to that. So that's certainly some of the things that I saw and witnessed from a point of view of, my view of the world.
Yeah, thanks, Jason, for adding your perspective. I want to move on to Rehan. Since you are based in Dubai and looking after the region, my question to you is, in which specific territories are you seeing a boom? Is it Saudi Arabia? Is it Qatar? Is it Bahrain? Is it Africa? Please enlighten us.
I think, Sharad, that's a great question. Actually, from Hitachi Vantara's perspective, I actually see this in two ways. One is obviously, from an Hitachi limited perspective, because, we're part of the mother company, Hitachi Limited, born in 1910. And, that gives obviously our customers some extra confidence that, we have a very, very strong economically, stable company as on our heads, similar to if you look at Google and Alphabet, relationship. So that probably gives a lot of confidence to our customers that within this region as well, including, the ones that you named, the UAE, Saudi, Qatar, and all of these regions. And I feel that, because this is very, very, important. And a lot of, like Jason mentioned in his session as well, we have seen a lot of, remote work, happening due to this pandemic. We still see that both, Saudi as well as, UAE, being the largest two regions in the GCC market. So I think these two regions, depending on various sectors, if you look at banking sectors as well as the telecom sectors, are probably much more I would say strong, and they probably were in a better position in the pandemic area versus if you look at airline industry or hospitality industry as well. So I think a lot of these from a regional perspective, things were we've seen that in the past. And I think your question also ties in a way to how is Hitachi Vantara doing in the region. And I think from Hitachi Vantara's perspective, I think we're very committed to MEP region. We are increasing our investments. We have direct as well as indirect presence in the major regions. If you look at UAE and Saudi, the commercial models that Jason mentioned, we have introduced those as well in these major regions. We have the capability to give direct support in these major regions as well, and we have customers under these contracts which we are obliged and as well as committed to continue for various reasons. And then we are increasing our investments as well as on our distribution model, our distribution such as Tech Access that we have co-sponsored this event with. We are increasing our investments in our resellers and partners as well, who are for sure one of the most valuable assets to our region as well. So I hope that addresses your question.
That's a very comprehensive answer. Thank you, Rayan. I just want to move on to a question from the audience. Sandeep Chabra is asking, and this is a question to anybody from the panel who wants to answer it. His question is, can you please touch on software-defined storage building blocks? So that's the question. And he says the accent is on data center storage with cloud computing, local backup, and archive, and not keep data on the cloud. So I don't know, is this for you, Chris? Or is it for Jason? Or maybe Santosh wants to come in.
Yeah, so let me take that. It's so let me just from the building block point of view, Hitachi takes a very holistic approach when it comes to software-defined storage. We are not limiting the customer towards just one technology. The way we take software-defined storage is from greenfield point of view and brownfield point. Now, when it comes to brownfield, a customer who already has either Hitachi storage or non-Hitachi storage, he can actually virtualize the non-Hitachi as well as the Hitachi storage behind the Hitachi controller, and through behind that controller, he can use the same operations, administration, replication tools, and data management, data protection tools, which is offered by Hitachi on the controller to manage every other storage platform inside his data center. So that is basically software-defined storage for customers who have already invested on-prem infrastructure, be it with Hitachi, be it non-Hitachi, but simplifying the operations and reducing TCO and increasing the return on investment by making sure we have simplified the tools, we have reduced the number of tools, the replication tools, the data management tools, the data protection tools, by virtualizing systems and storage behind our controller and using one single pane of glass to manage it. So that's one part. That's basically when the customers have invested in brownfield infrastructure. Greenfield is basically, Chris basically touched on this in quite an extensive and quite a beautiful way, which is customers have a choice. The application drives the infrastructure. If the customers have, if customers is building private cloud and they have standardized on, let's say, Red Hat or VMware, then they have a choice when it is VMware to use vSAN as a building block for software-defined storage. So they can go with either Ucp RS or Ucp HC, depending on what their private cloud deployment journey is going to be like. Or if they have, if they're going with Red Hat, then they can choose again Ucp RS to be able to use the building blocks, the server building blocks, or the hardware building blocks, to be able to build KVM virtualization, Red Hat OpenStack or OpenShift for the container management, and underlying using Ceph as the software-defined storage. So that covers basically greenfield and opens up a choice of hardware over there with, whether they want to go with hyper-converged or converged, and choices of software-defined storage platforms over there, whether it is vSAN from VMware, if they were going with private cloud from VMware, or using Chef if they have decided to go with Red Hat for their private cloud deployment. But we also, I'm going to repeat that part that Chris actually mentioned in one of his slides. That is, we also give customers a choice to use these hardware stacks to connect to the SAN storage to be able to give them flexibility of expanding the storage without tying it with the compute capacity. So that's how our building block when it comes to data protection, data management, data storage works for both greenfield and brownfield when it comes to software-defined storage.
Yeah, thanks, Santosh. Now I'm coming to Chris G. A question from the audience. Ali says, you mentioned that UCP Advisor is the management tool for all of these solutions. Can it manage more than one environment in other data centers too, or do I need to use multiple versions?
You can do both. Yeah, you can do both. You can have, I talked about multi-instancing before. So if you have multiple versions or multiple instances of a vCenter server, you can manage those through one instance of UCP Advisor. So you can do a multi-instance, or indeed you can start to run different UCP advisors and if you like, use a manager of managers. The easier way is to run a single instance of UCP Advisor, and then address all of the different vCenter versions that sit underneath it, whether they're on the same site or whether they're on different sites. I'm presuming those sites are probably going to be linked in some way, but yeah, from a management perspective, that's not a problem.
Right. This comment, it's actually a comment rather than a question, and it says Hitachi provides 100% data availability guarantee. Is that true, Jason, Santosh? Is it true that Hitachi provides 100% data availability guarantee to its customers?
Yes, it is. Yes, it's true. Yeah, we offer that as part of our service, as part of the technology, and that's primarily due to the redundancy that's within the technology as well. And like I touched on before, in terms of the way that the workload is distributed within the arrays as well. So yes, no, we do offer that.
And how does competition stack up to that one?
So let me take that. Sorry, Jason. So well, there's no competition that we know, so far that offers 100% data availability guarantee. They offer 5 nines service availability. However, when it comes to guarantee, which is what we believe the data is most important asset that customers have, we are the only vendor that offers the 100% data availability guarantee up until now. I mean, to the best of my knowledge.
Great. Since we are coming to the 90-minute mark, I'm going to give 30 seconds to 1 minute to each of the panelists to state the USP of Hitachi Vantara from your point of view. And I'll start with Jason. Less than a minute. What is the USP of Hitachi Vantara?
Look, Hitachi Vantara, Hitachi is a huge, huge organization. Like I say, engineering DNA. If you want anything from a rice cooker to a nuclear power plant, Hitachi Vantara can manufacture that. So, it's very passionate about its innovation. It's very passionate about machine learning, AI, and various things from that side. So it's very much an exciting organization. But, we want to work with our customers and partners to understand what's key for their business and where they want to go to.
Thank you. Chris G, your 1 minute starts now.
Okay, all right. So since working here for nearly 15 years, you very quickly learn that Hitachi is quite a pragmatic company. Every I suppose decision is around options. It's not about forcing people into certain categories or choices. It's about an option. So we're giving people the option to either go one way, the other, or maybe blend both. And it is all about having that choice. Yeah. So it's really about giving people the choice about which directions they want to move into, depending on their business need.
Rehan, what makes it exciting for you in 1 minute?
I think I'm excited for a lot of reasons. So, with Hitachi Vantara, looking at the future with our own IoT platforms, as well as machine learning and all of those things, which actually ties into our digital infrastructure, solutions, I think this whole portfolio story probably, keeps us unique among a lot of people out there, and then the ability to have the Hitachi limited expertise in their areas, and then come up with those combined solutions probably to power good for our customers is what excites me the most.
Thank you, Rehan. Santosh, where do you see Hitachi Vantara technology 5 years hence?
Sharad, I'll take this question.
Okay,
This is
go
our
ahead.
audience who haven't
Yes,
met me.
Ashish. Yeah.
Was Murphy's Law was playing on me today and my laptop came out. So I'm a territory sales manager with Hitachi for the past 3 years. And I would say the USP of Hitachi, honestly, is once you go with Hitachi, you stay with Hitachi. That's simply because of our reliability, availability, serviceability, which even Gartner swears by. And you can look at the last year's Gartner's report. We have scored the highest among all other vendors. We might not be the best in marketing, but once you invest in Hitachi, believe me, this will run. It will deliver what we promise. We do not overpromise, but we always deliver more than we promise.
Thank you, Ashish. Santosh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, thanks. Santosh, you want to add anything?
Well, I guess that 3 points that Ashish just added here, reliability, availability, and serviceability, that speaks for itself. I mean, Hitachi has the most reliable platform. We obviously guarantee that with our 100% data availability guarantee, and I guess we touched this. Jason also talked about it in his presentation, and I also touched on that we're the only vendor who offers that. And when it comes to serviceability, of course, it's easy to manage, operate. Our software platform is now across the board, across all our infrastructure. So you don't have to learn new tools every time we basically launch new product. It just plugs and plays. So it's like the iOS of the Apple, which is for the data center storage, data center infrastructure. Basically, that's what Hitachi offers in your enterprise space.
Yeah, on that happy note, yeah. Anybody wants to add anything else? All good? All right, so since we are 95 minutes now into the webinar, it's time to say thank you to all the panelists. Jason, thank you. Chris, Santosh, Rehan, Ashish. I want to thank our audience for their questions, for their participation. And one note for the audience, you can see a recording of this webinar and the podcast on onlywebinars.com in a couple of hours from now. So if you missed out on any part, you can just go to the website and grab that recording. Yeah, thanks once again for being a lovely audience. And we look forward to interacting with you in the future. Rehan is your contact for any sales inquiries. You can grab his contact information in the chat. So thank you all once again. Stay safe and see you on the other side. Bye for now.